Let me describe to you the course of our world, because it is the cause of much disturbance and conflict between believers who don't always readily accept or even recognize the course of this world, the trajectory of this world, where this world is headed. But the beginning of this year, the 117th Congress session began with prayer. And it was a prayer, I believe, to the unknown God. It was Emanuel Cleaver, who is an ordained Methodist preacher and also a member of the House of Representatives. He ended the prayer with the words, "All men and all women." It was his tribute to gender equality in Congress. That excitement energized a blasphemous conclusion to his prayer. This equality before him, women represented in the House of Representatives and also other, quote, genders among them. Well, it revealed Emanuel Cleaver's love for unbiblical equality. It was a celebration of the cancellation of a biblical family, a family of a mother and a father, male and female, with sons and daughters. And that is one structure that, if you've heard of this movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, it wants to dismantle the biblical family, or what they call the nuclear family. And their mission has begun years ago. It's taken shape in the course of our world through the House of Representatives, our civic leaders who are not standing up for what is right, for what is true, but for what is wrong. And that includes this ordained minister, who is a false teacher. He does not represent the gospel, does not represent truth. He is a liar and he's a deceiver. Well, let me translate Emanuel Cleaver's ending of All Women. His translation is this: it is that Congress will no longer use biblical terms like mother, father, son, or daughter. He, him, his, or her will not be used. Instead, Congress, our representatives, will include gender-inclusive language. They will, and I quote, modernize the use of pronouns in order to be inclusive of all members and delegates, resident commissioners, employees of the House, and the families, end quote. This change includes the removal of the word man. And so the word chair, for example, will replace chairman. Seafarers will replace seamen. Fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, and husbands, wives, and even in-laws are gone. In comes the parent, the child, the sibling, the spouse, or the parent-in-law. Yes, even the removal of an aunt or an uncle from their vocabulary. And then they will further identify this evil society by calling one person they, them, their, theirs, and themselves. So one human created in the image of God will be a them, will be a they, will be themselves, but not will be a he or will not be a she. Because we are living in an upside down world. A world and a society turned over to its sinful devices under the wrath of a holy God. And those decisions by our civic leaders are not only in the secular society, but in some measures, ministers like Emanuel Cleaver are endorsing this equality. They're signing off on the lie called gender equality or gender neutrality. They're signing off on the approval of immorality, and they're further stirring God's anger while they deceive the masses who trust in their preaching and their beliefs. And so what we're seeing today's society is not the advancement of humanity, but the intersection of immorality with social justice. And it has been in the pulpits of our churches for a long time. But now it has entered into the pulpits of once faithful men. Men who preach this doctrine, this false doctrine of social justice, are not for the gospel. They're not for the Lord. They're not for truth. They're a part of a nation being turned over by God. We're seeing the progressive decline of a society towards an all-inclusive system of belief. And that should come of no surprise. But what we're seeing is this is infiltrating the church, because the new civil rights movement is gender equality. It is coming under the heels of the civil rights movements in the 60s. And under the heels of this movement, they're saying that they are the new group that's being marginalized and mistreated. And pulpiteers, preachers are promoting this lie, promoting this sinful and evil propaganda. To that matter, years ago, this society, the Sodomite society, said that they will succeed. They warned us years ago that they will ride on the carpet of civil rights to achieve their goal of dismantling God's ordained structure. Now, with that sobering truth before us, dear saints, let me turn our sights to God's response and God's initiative in this world. Dear saints, God is actively exercising his wrath. When we see the spiritual decay in our world, it is not the rise of modern man toward independence. It is the fall of reasonable men under God's active displeasure.